Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaskaram. Welcome to this lecture on Shri Vempati Venkata Narayana garu. In the earlier lecture, we have seen about Shri Chinta Venkatramaya garu, who was like a second Siddhendra yogi to give a structure, format and a direction to Kuchipudi Natyam when there was an understanding of a slow decline in the Kuchipudi Natyam because of the different pressures that was there in the society. We have understood that during that period, there was less of a performances, because of which Venkatramaya garu had to take the decision of starting a new genre as such, or a presentational style, a new presentational technique to attract the audience, to make it more appealing and acceptable, and to also make Kuchipudi survive and not get into the decline mode. But one thing is that even during this period, when there were less of performances and not so much appealing to the audience, there were still some artists who actually made Kuchipudi performances successful even during this risky period. I shouldn't use the word risky, rather the right word to use it is a period where the growth of the art was very slow. But even during that period, there were certain artists who made the performances possible and sort of got encouragement and respect from the audience, and also made the tradition survive for a certain period of time, and also trained many students who eventually became greatest of the greatest legends in the Kuchipudi dance field. Now, amongst those performers who still continued performing when the period was not very conducive, we have to first talk about Vempati Venkata Narayana garu. He is regarded as one among the Kuchipudi quartet, and he was a very tall physique man who was very much adept in dance, music and also the intricate tala patterns. We'll learn more about him in this lecture. Born to Shri Vempati Punnamma garu and Shri Vempati Kodandaramaya garu in 1871, Shri Vempati Venkata Narayana garu was also the disciple of Yeleshwarapu Narayanappa garu. If you remember well, dear students, Yeleshwarapu Narayanappa garu was also the guru to Chinta Venkatramaya garu. So Vempati Venkata Narayana garu also learned under the same guru, and like any other Kuchipudi Bhagavatulu Brahmin boys, he also started learning dance from a very young age. And by the time he was already 12, at a very young age, he performed the Bhamavesham for the very first time in the Ramalingeshwara Swami temple. Now, when we discussed the legend of Siddhendra Yogi, do you remember that there was an oath taken by Siddhendra Yogi to the Kuchipudi Bhagavatulu that all Brahmin men, young boys, would be taught Kuchipudi and Bhama Kalapam, and they would perform the Bhama Kalapam in the Bhama Vesham in the Ramalingeshwara Swami temple. So similarly, continuing the family tradition, Venkata Narayana garu also performed Bhama Vesham in Bhama Kalapam for the very first time at a very young age of 12. Now at 12 years of age, understanding the Bhama Vesham the nuances of it and the philosophical inclination with which Satyabhama character has to be portrayed. Portraying Satyabhama character is very difficult. Why? Because it is not just about showcase of beauty and technique. It is also about understanding the deepest philosophies that Bhama Kalapam has, which has to be presented in a very balanced way. Now, there is a very thin line between being Shringara and being vulgar, and a very thin line between, being spiritual and being philosophical. All right. So, at 12 years, probably it is very difficult to understand these demarcations of what is Shringara or what is vulgarity, or what is the spiritual teachings that Satyabhama or Madhavi through their character Siddhendra Yogi is trying to teach. But Vempati Venkata Garu, as his sishyas or disciples say, or about whom the Kuchipudi Bhagavatulu talk, is the first thing that they say is he is an Ekasantagrahi. What is an Ekasantagrahi? Ekasantagrahi is a person who learns and memorizes everything for the first time when it is heard or spoken. So Venkat Narayana Garu had this ability of grasping things very fast. So at the age of 12 itself, he has done the Bhama Vesham in the Ramalingeshwara Swami temple, and his presentation of Satyabhama was so splendid, always, all through his career, that he was called as the Abhinava Satyabhama. We all know Sri Vedantam Satyanarayana Sharma Garu, who was called as Abhinava Satyabhama or Kuchipudi Satyabhama, or more so to a certain extent that when Satyanarayana Sharma Garu was alive, when he was there in the Kuchipudi village, living there, when people used to enter the Kuchipudi village and ask, where is Satyanarayana Sharma Garu's house, people would get confused as to about which Satyanarayana Sharma you're asking, because Satyanarayana Sharma, Narayana, all these are very common names in the Andhra region. So they used to ask which Satyanarayana Sharma. But the moment you enter into Kuchipudi village and you ask where is Satyabhama Garu's house, they would immediately show you Vedantam Satyanarayana Sharma Garu. So that famous was his portrayal of Satyabhama. But much before Vedantam Satyanarayana Sharma Garu, there was another Abhinava Satyabhama, which is Vempati Venkata Narayana Garu, who was so famous for his Bhama Vesham that even after, a longer period of time, when he also started performing Yakshaganams with his troupe, still whenever he went to perform there, after the Yakshaganam was over, people or the Zamindars used to request him to do the Bhama Vesham at least for a short period of time. So that was the fan following that he had even during the period when art was not much looked upon. All right, and he was also called as Laya Brahma because his knowledge on Laya and Tala and the Jati patterns was, I think I don't have a right word to say, it's superb. Because he learnt the Laya and the Tala from a Mridangist, and not through the family tradition of learning music for the dance purpose. He exclusively learnt Laya and Tala directly from a Mridangist. And how did that knowledge contribute to Kuchipudi dance? Well, we shall see in the next slide. But one thing that I have to put forward is, unfortunately, amongst all the 4 people in the Kuchipudi quartet, it looks that Vempati Venkata Narayana Garu didn't get as much as of recognition that the other 3 have got. It's very, very disturbing to know that he even never had a photo of himself to show at least to the future generations that, look, this is Vempati Venkata Narayana Garu. The one that is shown in the PPT is a painting with the human memory that people have of Vempati Venkata Narayana Garu, but an actual photograph of him is not at all available, and he never bothered about, rather taking photographs and publicizing it. He only dedicated his entire life to the propagation of the art, trying to stick to the tradition, trying to perform it according to the Shastra, and trying to make it accessible to the people, go to different places and talk about Kuchipudi, perform Kuchipudi. So that was his entire life mission. And his abhinaya is incomparable and his master over talam is superb. He was also a Nattuvanar for many Devadasis during his time. Sri Vempati Kodandaramaya Garu, Venkata Narayana Garu's father, was also a Nattuvanar to many Devadasis in and around the Kuchipudi village temple. I think I've told you before in the earlier lectures that Kuchipudi Bhagavatulu also used to be a part of some Devadasis Melam, doing Nattuvangam for them, sometimes teaching them dances, and sometimes teaching them abhinaya, and also they also used to be a part of Devadasi Melams. When these Devadasis performed Bhagavatams in the king's court especially, they needed male actors to perform the male roles. So they used to always invite the Kuchipudi Bhagavatulu, because Kuchipudi Bhagavatulu always had a great respect for Devadasis, and Devadasis to the Bhagavatulu. It was always vice versa. And there was always an interchange of skill and knowledge between these two performing communities. So similarly, following his father's footsteps, Venkata Narayana Garu also did Nattuvangam to many Devadasis during his time, for which he was greatly respected, for the respect also he has shown for Devadasis during that time. And as I told before, he was well versed in Bhama Kalapam by the age of 12. And by the age of 14, within just 2 years, he became completely adept with Golla Kalapam, that he could understand, very importantly understand, memorize and perform the Golla Kalapam also to such a great extent that it was so much accepted by even the most seniors of the Kuchipudi Bhagavata Mela Natakam. See, because Golla Kalapam, unlike Bhama Kalapam, doesn't have even a Shringara material. It is heavily dosed with philosophical and Vedantic discussions and conversations, that spontaneous improvisations also require a lot of philosophical understanding of life, the text and the context in which the plot is being made. So at age 14, I think it is impossible for any youngster to be so well versed in the philosophical and the Vedantic understanding of Golla Kalapam. But Venkata Narayana Garu was such a splendid actor and such a great artist that by 12 he could completely do Bhama Kalapam, acceptable to the seniors, very important. And by 14 he could perform Golla Kalapam. A dance concert at the Chodayapalam, a Zamindari village in Guntur, was there, where they had organized an event to honor a Devadasi called as Chinnarani. Now, Venkata Narayana Garu's father got an invitation to attend this event by the Zamindar, because as we said before, Kodandaramaya Garu was also a Nattuvanar for many of the Devadasis during his time. So what Kodandaramaya Garu does is, he goes to the event to this Chodayapalam village in Guntur, which is very neighboring to Kuchipudi. And that place had expert Devadasi dancers, and he also takes his son along with him, who was a young lad. All right, he was in his prime teens during that time. And there, of course, the dance was splendid, superb. The program went on very well. And but one thing that caught the sight of both Kodandaramaya Garu and Venkata Narayana Garu was the mridangist, an old man whose name was Mahankali Sitaya Garu. The name Mahankali also belongs to the traditional family of Kuchipudi, who also, yes, of course, belonged to Kuchipudi village, but migrated to Guntur and became a very famous mridangist of his times. He was lending the mridangam support to the Devadasi Chinnarani, who was being felicitated on that occasion. Now, after the program was over, Kodandaramaya Garu approached Mahankali Sitaya Garu and said that he was mesmerized with the way that he was playing the mridangam and the thala patterns and the way the formations of the tala is being intricately made. And he said that he would want his son to learn the tala system from him. And you don't believe he just left Venkat Narayana Garu there at Chodaipalam and came back alone to Kuchipudi village. Now this incident is written in the book by Nagabhushana Sharma Garu, in his book Kuchipudi Performers and Performance Traditions, which has been told to him by Mahankali Sita Garu's grandson, who told that Vempati Venkat Narayana Garu came to their house and stayed with them for almost 2-3 years to learn the tala system from his grandfather. So this is an oral narration of an incident that has actually happened. Not just this, dear students, many of the stories and the legends that we believe, which are a part of the great history of Kuchipudi Natyam, many of them are oral narratives only. Because you see, not just Andhra or specifically Krishna belt, but one thing please understand, that our entire India never had the habit of writing everything and documenting it. Our entire knowledge systems, including the Vedas, were only passed through oral tradition. So please don't understand any part of history in terms of what is contemporarily accepted to us. Oh, it is not there on a published article, it is not published in any journal, so I don't believe it. No. Our oral narratives, our oral traditions are so strong that have been passing over centuries and centuries, that our Bharata Desha never bothered about any copyrights or documentations. The only thing that Bharata Desha always worried was passing on the knowledge. The only mission was passing on the knowledge. So even to the greatest of the greatest treatises, sometimes we don't know who the author is. We don't know actually who has written it. But the text is being passed over every generation, benefiting crores of people. So that importance that the oral narratives have, especially in our Indian knowledge systems, have to be taken for truth. There is a little truth that is always there in our oral narratives, and we shouldn't understand them from a very contemporary understanding. All right. Now let's get back to it. This has been orally narrated by Mahankali Sitaya Garu's grandson, and Venkat Narayana Garu, under his guru's excellent teaching of Tala, has become so strong in the Tala systems and the Jati patterns that he was very responsible for creating the Jati patterns eventually in the Kuchipudi dance drama tradition. Why did this happen? Because Mahankali Sitaya Garu, what he used to do was, he used to play the mridangam and tell Venkat Narayana Garu to dance to whatever he played on the mridangam, very similar to the jatis that we do in Kuchipudi now. So this way, this sort of jugalbandi made Venkat Narayana Garu so much artistically skilled in the Tala system and the Jati patterns, that he created so many Jatis for Kuchipudi and the Kuchipudi Yakshaganas. Alright, many of these Jatis, Nagabhushana Sharma Garu says in his book, that are documented with Vempati Chinnasatya Master Garu in the Kuchipudi Art Academy. This was when the book was published. This is what Nagabhushana Sharma Garu says. So a lot of Jati patterns and formations and the intricate anatomy of the Jatis were all understood, taught and documented by Vempati Venkat Narayana Garu, which later was very beneficial to the Kuchipudi dance tradition. Alright, and it was very splendid. Now, another important thing about Vempati Venkat Narayana Garu was the Balinta Vesham and the Dadinamma Vesham. Balinta Vesham and Dadinamma Vesham both are a part of the Pagati Veshams that became a part of the Kuchipudi tradition. We have seen that in the earlier lectures. Now, he was very well known for the Balinta Vesham and the Dadinamma Vesham. Now, why specifically we talk about Balinta and Dadinamma Vesham is because it is very difficult to do, especially these two Veshams, because Balinta Vesham is about a lady who is pregnant, and the story is about Devaki, who's pregnant with Krishna, and the sort of body language that the actor has to do is of a pregnant woman, and it is only done by men, and it's very difficult to portray a pregnant women's role, and she'll be cursing her husband for all the pain that she is undergoing. And I mean, this is just the story on a very superficial level, all right? And then she gives birth to Bhagavan Sri Krishna, and this Vesham ends with a lullaby of Annamacharya Kirtana, Devaki to Bhagavan Sri Krishna. Now, this Balinta Vesham is usually very difficult to portray, because for a man to showcase what a woman feels when she is pregnant, how her mental condition would be, how her body language would be, what has to be showcased during the delivery, because few things according to Natya Shastra should not be showcased on the stage. For example, fire, or some acts of intimacy, or delivery, the delivery of a baby. So all these things are not allowed to be showcased on the stage. So following those rules and regulations, how subtly these things can be shown is a very challenging task to many of the actors. So usually people don't take the risk of trying Balinta Vesham or Dadinamma Vesham. But Venkata Narayana Garu was very much adept in doing also these Veshams. And coming to Dadinamma Vesham is about a princess. Her name is Leelavati, who is the daughter of King Bhoja and his queen Manavati. Now, the story goes such that Leelavati is kidnapped and is kept in a forest where her hands and legs are tied to a certain thing. Now, and she is left alone in the forest. Now, the only way that Dadinamma Vesham and the plight of Leelavati, who got kidnapped, can be shown is only with your voice modulation and your facial expressions, because your hands and legs are tied. So it's always a challenge to any actor of any great expertise to do the Dadinamma Vesham, because it only requires your voice and your face. But Venkata Narayana Garu used to do this Dadinamma Vesham also splendidly, and his audience used to always be spellbound by his performances, all right. So the way he did this Balinta Vesham and Dadinamma Vesham are also very famous in terms of the contributions of Vempati Venkata Narayana Garu. And these Pagati Veshams, unlike the Kuchipudi Yakshaganams, didn't go for hours and hours together, or nights and nights together, or days and days, because it was Pagati Vesham. But Pagati Vesham presentation was hardly for half an hour to 45 minutes, less than an hour it was. So presenting so much and talking about a character so much in a limited period of time is also very challenging for an actor. And Venkata Narayana Garu was very well adept with this portrayal of Balinta and Dadinamma also. During those times itself, in 1890 to 1930, Venkatramaya Garu has toured and given almost 3,000 performances. Now I'm talking about a time where the traditional art forms were not so much encouraged or patronaged, right? We discussed that in the last lecture when we understood Chinta Venkatramaya Garu. But even in that time also, he had given almost 3,000 presentations, and he always kept his audience spellbound, wanting more. And it is not an exaggeration if I say that there was no village festival or a Zamindari personal festival where there was no Vempati Venkata Narayana Garu's performance. So that was the amount of popularity that he got for himself, of course, and also to the art form of Kuchipudi when it was a very challenging period. Now, Venkata Garu also tried his hand with his own troupe for Yakshaganas, and of course, because of his popularity and his performative skill, and with the techniques that he used while presentations and his jati patterns, and for all the great development that he made during the challenging time, he was given numerous awards by the zamindars and the village heads, and more so he became synonymous with the Kuchipudi Natyam. All right, and many scholars like Puranam Suri Shastri Garu and Sishta Ramakrishna Shastri Garu, Vishwanatha Satyanarayana Garu, a very great poet, and Jalasutram Rukmini Natha Shastri Garu and Adibhatla Narayana Dasu Garu, a great Harikatha performer and scholar, all spoke about Vempati Venkata Garu. If you want to have a good read of Vempati Venkata Garu, I think you have to follow the book by Nagbhushan Sharma Garu, which is very beneficial to all of us, including me, who has taken all this material from his book majorly. All right, and Adibhatla Narayana Das Garu, who was a great Harikatha performer and a scholar, it seems that he requested Vempati Narayana Garu to call him for his next performance because he wants to do Natuvangam for Vempati Venkata Narayana Garu. Isn't that so inspiring and so good to know that a great scholar like Adibhatla Narayana Das Garu wanted to do Natuvangam voluntarily for Vempati Venkata Narayana Garu? And apart from his contributions and performances and his jati patterns and expertise on tala that were very beneficial to the Kuchipudi Natyam, he also trained numerous students in this art form, and who went on to become some of the legends in the Kuchipudi dance, like Shri Vedantam Lakshmi Narayana Shastri Garu, Shri Chinta Ramamurthy Garu, Shri Chinta Radha Krishnamurthy Garu, and Shri Bhagavatula Lakshmi Narasimham Garu, Shri Pasumarthi Vishwanatham Garu. All these people and many more were all devout disciples of Vempati Venkata Narayana Garu. And imagine the strength that he gave to his students, that Vedantan Lakshmi Narayana Shastri Garu was like another greatest of the greatest innovator to what the Kuchipudi Natyam is looking like today. Probably the strength of the students is the inspiration that their guru gives. So imagine the amount of contributions that Venkata Narayana Garu have done, but very unfortunately got less recognition in comparison with his peers, but always kept the tradition alive through the Shastra and sticking to the Shastra more so, and through his performances, that even during challenging times, the name of Kuchipudi was heard everywhere. Sometimes when it's challenging, we do not take the risk of propagating it and wait for someone to bell the cat. But people like Vempati Venkata Narayana Garu have always sticked to the tradition and performed it in all places with thousands of performances, that he just inspired everyone and made the name Kuchipudi heard everywhere even during the challenging times, and created and trained so many students who became legends in the further areas. He passed away in 1935, and it's very nice to know. I don't know if I should say nice or not, but 1937 exactly was the year when Vedantam Satyanarayana Sharma Garu was born. So probably Nagbhushan Sharma Garu in his book, he says that probably Siddhendra Yogi wanted another Satyabhama again to come into the picture when one Satyabhama was leaving. So the year when Vempati Venkata Narayana Garu left his mortal body, the Abhinava Satyabhama, another Satyabhama was born on the same year by the name Vedantam Satyanarayana Sharma Garu, who again took the Satyabhama Vesham to another level through the performances. So this is all about Vempati Venkat Narayana garu, who is one of the Kuchipudi quartet. Until we meet again in the next lecture, thank you and namaskaram.